Japanese sexuality portrayed through anime. So, for this presentation, I'll be talking about the portrayal of sexual themes within anime in comparison to Western cartoons, as well as the transformation of sexuality in recent years within anime itself. And lastly, I would like to briefly touch on how the sexuality as well as its transformation has made an impact on Japanese society. So, beginning with my first point, I wanted to talk about how anime gets away with a lot more suggestive themes when compared to Western cartoons. I first noticed this when I watched Naruto for the first time. Being rated a TV PG and considered a shonen anime, which means it's intended for children and teens, I assumed it would be fairly tame, but after watching, I was very confused as to why it would receive such a low age rating. Along with some blood and minor cussing, there were a surprising amount of sexual references and fan service. One thing that really stood out to me was the character Jiraiya, or the pervy sage as referred to by Naruto. In the series, Jiraiya takes Naruto under his wing to train him to become a better ninja. Pervy Sage earned his nickname by, just kind of being a pervert. And when he is not training Naruto, he is either sneaking into hot springs to look at naked women or trying to pursue them in whatever town they happen to be visiting. Along with this, there's also Naruto's sexy jutsu, in which he transforms himself into a naked woman in order to distract his opponent. And there's also the character Tsunade, who is often sexualized by many other characters for having a big chest. So at this point, I think it's fairly obvious why Naruto is a little problematic for a children's show, at least when compared to Western cartoons such as Regular Show and Adventure Time. These cartoons were released at the same time as Naruto, targeted towards the same demographic, and were given the same rating of TV PG. Despite all of this, sexual themes are completely absent from these cartoons, as well as almost all other Western cartoons for children. I can imagine the uproar and criticism that Naruto and many other shonen anime would receive if they were broadcasted alongside some of the Western cartoons on Cartoon Network and or Disney Channel. If you take a look at the slide, you can see some of the characters from Naruto that I mentioned earlier, as well as some characters from popular Western cartoons, such as The Amazing World of Gumball, Adventure Time, and Regular Show. I believe that the reason for this lies in the difference between Western and Japanese perspectives on sexuality. Japan is traditionally more open in terms of sexuality, which can be seen in Japanese media such as anime. Japan's openness towards sexuality dates back all the way to the Edo period with the shunga, which were images of pornography often made into woodblock prints known as ukiyo-e. Shunga was created and shared without shame and was often encouraged. Another reason for this is that Japanese society lacks a strict religious code that controls or prohibits sexual behavior. This is very different from the West, where this kind of behavior is often shamed and punished by the dominant Christian conservative ideology. Here are some examples of shunga I found. It honestly took a while to find some of these examples that were PG. Many of the other examples I came across were pretty graphic and detailed. A few even portrayed lesbian relationships and relationships with animals, which I found pretty surprising for the time. Next, I would like to talk about the transformation of sexuality within anime. In recent years, I believe that anime has challenged traditional gender roles and has been influenced by the LGBT community. A good example of this can be seen in the anime JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which also happens to be my favorite anime. JoJo's Bizarre Adventure was first produced as a manga in 1987 and has since been adapted into anime and is still being written and produced today. Currently, there are 8 different parts which each revolve around a different member of the Joestar bloodline. And here's a collage of all the current Joestars, with the first Joestar being on the right and the most recent one being on the left. In the first few parts, the Joestars, as well as the other supporting characters, are insanely muscular and are dressed in traditionally masculine clothes, and they defeat their enemies using a lot of brute force supported by their huge muscles. As the series goes on, the main characters of each season become less and less traditionally masculine. The characters no longer look like professional bodybuilders and have much more slimmer athletic appearances. Along with this, their fighting styles become much more strategic and rely less on pure physicality. A very important part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is the change in fashion. In later parts, the characters also undergo a drastic transformation in terms of style. The characters are dressed much more feminine and often wear lots of jewelry as well as having painted nails and makeup. In modern Western society, men's fashion has been pretty limited to things like suits and streetwear due to traditional gender roles as well as homophobia. But in the world of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the characters dress however they please, whether it be traditionally feminine or masculine, and no one is ever judged for it. Some of the male characters wear dresses, skirts, and crop tops, which can be seen as an influence from queer fashion. Here I have included pictures of the first Joestar, Jonathan, along with the 5th Joestar, Giorno, and the 7th Joestar, Johnny. As you can tell by looking at them, Johnny and Giorno are much less muscular than Jonathan, and they also have a much more flamboyant style. I've also included a meme about Jonathan because I think it's pretty funny how insanely huge the writers decided to make him, as well as some of the other characters from the earlier seasons. Themes of sexuality in anime have some positive as well as some negative impacts on Japanese society. Positive examples include the progressive stance on gender roles and sexuality as seen in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, as well as many other popular anime, but sexuality when portrayed in an inappropriate manner can have a dangerous effect on society. Some animes are guilty of objectifying women as well as promoting sexual harassment as acceptable behavior. Despite a decreasing crime rate in Japan, sexual assault numbers have been on the rise. In recent years, Japan has experienced a significant increase in sexual assault cases, especially on public trains and buses. I feel that some anime may be responsible for this increase, and in the future I hope to see more positive displays of sexuality rather than ones that cultivate inappropriate treatment of women. And here I just included some pictures of overcrowded subways where a majority of sexual assaults are reported. All in all, I think sexual themes within anime represent the increased sexuality of Japanese culture relative to that of the West. The transformation of sexuality in recent years is representative of steps being taken to dismantle traditional views on sexuality and gender roles. And that pretty much wraps up my presentation. Here are some of the sources I used, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.